Hi everyone. This is going to be a pretty quick video, assuming we get through this, about the third type of fact pattern that you're going to see possibly under a Establishment Clause fact pattern. So again, the Establishment Clause is the clause that courts consider to be the one that really is more geared towards stopping the government from promoting religion. We have seen already that the first fact pattern you want to look at is when the government gives aid to religion. Then you apply the Lemon-Agostini Mitchell test. The second type of fact pattern where the Lemon-Agostini Mitchell test wouldn't work would be displays on public property. We talked about that in the video. There is no recipient, there's only a viewer, so you have to come up with a different test. The test for those is secular. I should have said this. The test for any one of the three is you start with secular purpose. Would you please stop that? That's the first prong of any one of those three. So if you see aid to religion, secular purpose, and then the primary effects test. If you see display on public property, secular purpose, and then the endorsement test. And that leaves us with schools, where you can either have prayer in school or some kind of other religious thing going on in schools. When it comes to schools, and we're talking public schools again from K to 12, if you see something religious going on in the school, and there we're talking about the government doing it, so we're talking about public school teacher, public school administrator, that they are engaging in something, prayer or putting up a religious display in the school, something like that. We're not going to get too far afield. I mean, those are usually the types of cases that you're talking about. So if you see that in a public school K through 12, here's one word you have got to use in your answer: coercion. Okay, is there coercion? Justice O'Connor was the one who really developed this, this approach to the Establishment Clause in public school cases. And here's how the thinking goes. Justice O'Connor said, look, if let's say that you're a teacher, a public school teacher, or a public school principal, whatever it is, and you're calling a prayer in the morning, and you're praying to a specific deity or a specific God, which would obviously probably be the one you believe in. Then look, sometimes there's no lawsuit. Sometimes, people ask that all the time of me, in classes. If teachers or coaches, in a public school are not supposed to have prayers, why did it happen in my school all the time? The answer to that, as Lainey laps up her water over here, the answer to that is nobody sued, If nobody objects and nobody sues and everybody goes along with it and everybody's fine with it, well then there's no lawsuit, and it happens all the time. But sometimes there are going to be people who will raise an issue because they have a problem with it. Typically, obviously, that's going to be a person who either the student or the parent or both, is not an adherent to the majority religious view or religious beliefs. So, excuse me, I've been talking all day today on videos, so pardon my throat clearing, which is even worse than usual. But so here's what Justice O'Connor says about that. When you have a student who is not an adherent to the beliefs that are being expressed or displayed or whatever the case may be, if you're a school district, and you make that student either participate, or at most participate, at the very least, at least be present during, one of these expressions of religious belief, you have put that student to the choice, and I ask you because I think she might be onto something here, because I remember being in middle school, and I remember being in the lower grades, below 7th grade, and I don't know about you, but my primary goal every day, and especially in middle school, was to get through the day completely unnoticed. If I could get home at 3:30 in the afternoon and nobody noticed I was even there, that was a beautiful day, a successful day at school, Kids, and I guess I count myself among them when I was a kid, they don't want to stand out. They don't right? They don't want to be targeted. They don't want to be different, right? So O'Connor comes up with this approach to this, saying, look, you had a kid, maybe let's say it's an atheist, okay, whose parent is raising the kid as an atheist or agnostic, whatever the case may be. And the kid is being forced to be in an environment where there's prayer going on. It's either mandatory that the kid participate, or it's mandatory at least that he or she be present. So that kid now has a choice. Either I do that, right? I participate in it, or I go along with it, right? And in so doing, violate my own principles, right? And my own beliefs. So I either do that, or I object, right, and make a scene, right, and become a target, right. So I can either go along and acquiesce, right, which would be a violation of my own tenets and my own beliefs, or I can make a scene and not, or simply not go along, right, and thereby make myself a target, right, and identify myself as an outsider. O'Connor actually used those words, right, to feel like an outsider. The idea behind the coercion test is that you cannot put a student to that choice. Okay, that's coerce means to force, right? And what O'Connor meant was force a student into that choice, right? Go along, violate my own principles, or don't go along and become an outcast, right, in my school. And just as O'Connor's opinion was, whether she was right or wrong, you cannot do that. A public school cannot do that to a public school student, right? In a country where the government is supposed to be neutral as to religion. So, you want to look out for, okay, you know, the cases in your reading. I'm not going to go through every single case, right? Is it okay to have a sectarian prayer, right, at a graduation? Probably not. Now, if nobody sues, then nobody sues, like I said. But a sectarian prayer, meaning a religious prayer, right, could get a school district in trouble. You see the cases where courts are pretty sensitive about that no matter what. You have the one case where even, right, the school district said, well, we'll have the students, elect, right, somebody to pick, right, the person who's going to give the invocation. Well, if that person happens to be a clergy member who's going to deliver, right, some kind of remarks that are going to suggest the existence, right, of a creator, whether that's in general or more specifically, again, you see in your reading that the court disallowed that, right, that is not permissible in a public school. Obviously, we're not talking about private schools here, right? The other line of cases that I want to mention here would be the cases about the teaching of evolution/creationism, right, which are not, obviously, in terms of what's taught in schools, those can be at odds with each other. Ladies football. There too, those are cases where it's really interesting, where the court said we don't get past the secular purpose part, right, of these cases, right, that deal with schools, because the teaching of creationism, the creationism story is in the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis is obviously in a holy book. So the court says, so there's no way you can argue that teaching that as science, let's be careful about that, that teaching that as science, right, that has a secular purpose, right. That later changed from creationism to creation science, and that's the case in which the court actually accused the government of a sham, right, argument. The government argued, we just want people to have diverse opportunities to learn both theories, right, the theory of evolution and the theory of creationism. And again, the court said, but creationism is not a scientific theory, it's a religious tenet, and therefore, you know, there's no secular purpose to teaching that in science class. Now, I say science because you have to be careful about this. It is okay for a public school district to teach students about world religions, right, and cultures of the world throughout history and in contemporary times. If you do that in a class called, right, Religions of the World or World History, right, something like that, then a school district is not going to get into trouble for that. So it's not like no talk about religion can happen in a public school, right? We're talking about, right, circumstances under which the school is, right, teaching religion in science class, and you see that line of cases where the court said no, that's not going to fly. So that's school speech. Anytime you see religious speech or indoctrination of any kind going on in a public school, you want to make sure that you look at, first of all, whether there's a secular purpose. Again, in those cases, that line of cases about evolution / creationism, you see that the court, that's the example I used earlier actually, sometimes that prong has teeth, right? There has to be a secular purpose. Even if you get past that, right, then the question is there coercion in the fact pattern? And to repeat one more time, coercion means putting a student to the choice whether to go along and violate their own principles or not go along, right, and make themselves a mark, an outcast. So Lainey seems to have had enough for today, so I will call it quits here. But that's going to be pretty much a wrap on the Establishment Clause. A little more review on that next video, and then we'll do free exercise. Sorry for the racket. It's the price we all pay for me having to do this for home. Be well, and I'll see you for the next video.